friends, and welcome back to Grace Company Quilting. Today we're going to talk about the overview features of QCT6 Plus. So let's get right into it. We're going to start on our tablet and we're going to open Quilter's Creative Touch. And it's going to ask us to make sure that the sewing machine is in the middle of our quilting area and that the needle is up. We've double checked both of those things so we can hit OK. And now we're ready to go. So this is what you see when you open QCT6 Plus. So we're gonna go ahead and start in Select and Sew. It's gonna ask us to set a safe area. Whether you're in simulation mode or on the machine, it is gonna ask you to set that safe area. So we're gonna go ahead and start in the corner here. You wanna be off the edge of your quilt top. This is gonna allow you to have a safe area that is our quiltable area. So we're gonna go top left, and then we're gonna go ahead and use our bottom right. I'm gonna bring the machine all the way down to the front of that frame here so that it is touching. And then we're gonna move over from our quilt top over to the right here. And I'm gonna say this is my bottom right. So now I know that everything on my blue panel here is going to be within my safe area. I'm not gonna have any issues. So now I'm gonna go ahead and select a pattern. We're gonna do something just really simple. So let's do the fill 2. And I'm gonna hit open. And we're gonna start by learning about pattern placement. There are several different ways to place your pattern. The first one that you see here, this is 4-point placement. And it has two options. You can either stretch it. So let's say we're gonna put our top point here, and I'm just gonna adjust these points so that it specifically looks wonky. You probably don't wanna do this in your actual quilt design. But this is what a stretch fit would look like. So then we can swap it over to fit mode, and you can see that it doesn't adjust how the design looks. It just adjusts where the quiltable area is. So again, we'll show the difference between stretch, where those points go all the way out and it looks kind of wonky, versus fit, where it keeps that design within its spectrum here. So that is going to be your 4-point placement. The next option you have, we're going to go all the way to the top. This is 1-point placement. And there's 4 different modes for 1-point placement. You can do just your start point, and that we would select right there, and that'll do your start point. You can adjust the size over on the right here. Or you can do the end point placement, which for this design doesn't really look any different because they start and end at the same place. Center placement, so if I wanted the center of those orange peels to be at the center of my block, I could just hit that center piece, and that would put me right in the center. Or your corner point placement, which will always be that top left-hand corner. There is also 2-point placement, which usually is for designs that have multiple patterns within them. So you can do your start point, your end point, your stretch point, or your fit point. There's the block placement, which is your 2 corners. So if you have a square block, you can do your top left and your bottom right. If you have a triangular design, you can do a triangle one. So if I selected my pattern, and let's swap to one that is more of a triangle here, we'll use the crazy try. You can see that it gives you the option for that triangle placement. So if I have a triangle block like these flying geese on the edge of my quilt here, I could use that to fill in that shape. And then we have the on-point placement, where if I have a diamond block, I might want to have that on-point placement rather than the 4-point placement, so that way it'll fit my block exactly the way I want it to and not change the direction of my design. So I'm gonna go back to that simple pattern here. We're gonna go back to fill 2, and we're gonna go ahead and do 4-point placement, and I'm gonna use the fit placement. So I'm gonna use my foot here as kind of a guide, And I want my block to be able to fit within 4 points here. So we'll do top left, top right, bottom left, and bottom right. And all I'm doing is just aligning my needle with the corner of the design here. So now that I've placed my pattern, I can go ahead and quilt it. So it's going to connect to the machine here, and I'm going to go ahead and move to start point. Do a single stitch once it's at the start point, pull up my bobbin, and then we can hit sew. So it's going to do a few micro stitches to stitch out that design. And as you can see, it's fitting that design to make sure that it's not stretching it in any way, but it's keeping it within those 4 points that we placed before. It's going to do a quick tie off since we're doing just a block. We can pull our machine away, bring it back, do a single stitch, and pull that bobbin thread so we don't end up with any thread nests, and trim. So now we can finish and go back to pattern placement. The marking tool is really cool for a lot of different reasons. Let's say we were using center point placement. So we'll go up to 1 point and do center point. And I'm going to say this is the center of my block. With that, it doesn't automatically change how our block looks width and height wise. So what I want to do is kind of mark the outside of my block here. So I'm going to open my toolbox and I'm going to grab the marking tool. And I'm just going to mark a few points. So I'm going to start up at this corner. We'll add a point here. Add a point here. Add a point here. And I'm just going to outline my block. Perfect. So you can see I've just created my block. If I wanted to, I could opt in to quilt those markings by checking that box off to the right there, right on top of the quilt button. That would allow me to stitch in the ditch. But I'm going to close up my toolbox and we're in 1 point placement. So I want to shrink that up to be just in the center. So I'm going to make sure that my height and width are locked. And perfect. Now I know that my design is going to be within that block that I marked because I can see it on my quilting interface. And it would stitch out just the way the other one did. So let's go ahead and go to quilt. So it's saying I have not fully placed my design. So I'm going to go ahead and go again in that middle point and make sure that that circle is green. That will let you know that your design has been placed. So now we can hit quilt. And again, let's go move to start point because it's going to do our markings and our block that we placed so that we have a nice finished stitch in the ditch look. We'll do a single stitch, pull up our bobbin, and then we can hit sew. While it's moving, I'm just going to trim my block here. And you can see it's stitching right on those marked points that we made earlier. It's going to do a simple little tie off. And then it's going to move to that next start point. I'm just going to trim that up. And now it's going to stitch that design that we placed within those markings. It's going to do a little tie off, and then we can trim our tails. Make sure that that bobbin thread is taut before you pull it up. And there we go. Now we can hit finish, back to pattern placement. One thing I did want to show you, since this pattern is still placed, if I uncheck that markings tool, we can hit quilt, and it'll still show your markings, but it's not going to show them as quiltable. Remember how the outside of the other one showed an additional quilted area? This is not showing those markings as quilted, it's just showing where they're being placed. So we can hit back. And if I want to open up my marking tool, I can remove all, get rid of those guys. The next tool that we have is the ruler tool. This can be especially helpful when you are doing those markings. Instead of using the marking tool, you can say, how big is my block? I don't know, let's measure. So we'll start in this corner. I can do start point, end point, and it's going to tell me that the distance between point A and point B is 6.976 inches. Now, if I go again and I say this is my start point, this is my end point, it's going to say the distance between those 2 points that I just placed is 4.641 inches. This is particularly nice when you are going to fill in a block. I can say, okay, I know roughly it's a 6x4 block. So I can close out of my measuring tool. And right now I know my width and my height is 5.3 inches. So I can do center point placement, place that in the center of my block. And I know that that is going to fit within those requirements. If I wanted to fit it within the smaller rectangle like I did on the first block we stitched out, I would just need to decrease the size. So my height, I would make it 4, and then my width would also be 4 as well. So that would still put it right in the center of my block, but it would be just a little bit smaller to make sure that it fit within those requirements. So the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be some of the additional features within the layout of the quilting interface here. So one of the options we have is show grid. If you didn't want a grid on your screen and you just wanted it to be blank empty canvas, you can check and uncheck that. Makes it really simple. I prefer the grid just because I like to see where my designs lay out within my safe area. The other option that you have is to show the pattern size. So that just shows you at the top left-hand corner here, the width and the height of your pattern. It also shows you here on that right side within your size window to make those adjustments. And then lastly is those placement nodes. So if you didn't want to show those for some reason, you can turn those off. You do have the option of Instaplace as well, which makes it really simple to place your design. I can just hit select to make it really easy for that pattern placement. If for some reason you wanted your orange peel on point or at another angle, we can go ahead and rotate that pattern. So if I wanted it to be more like a star, we can do it this way instead of making it look like a flower. I'll show you with another pattern as well, something that is a little bit less symmetrical. We'll use the bear. If I wanted a bear at a 45-degree angle to be able to fit in a block, maybe let's say I have a corner block that's on point and I want that teddy bear to be in the corner and have it in all four corners going the different directions, all I would do is rotate him. So we can have him sideways, up and down, or at an angle. You can also set the angle. So if you know I want it to be at 180 degrees, that'll flip him right upside down. So instead of going through the 45 measurements, you can do that as well. And one last thing, if I need to adjust the safe area, let's say for some reason I didn't do it right the first time, I messed up, I'm just gonna go ahead and click that set safe area and I can go ahead, it'll take me back to the beginning and I can again reset the safe area with the top left and the bottom right. Just like that, simple as easy. The only thing is that will reset everything you have on that screen. So just be wary of that. If you do need to reset your safe area, you are going to lose all of the work that you had done with those pattern placements. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode overviewing QCT6 Plus. We can't wait to see what you create. Share with us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We'd love to see everything that you share with us. Thank you so much for joining us again and have a great day.